Hello, how are you?
Dear friends, hello. We start the press conference dedicated to the beginning of the Russian presidency in United States Security Council, United Nations Security Council. Sorry. Here we have our political coordinator Alexander Volgarev and Ambassador Nebenzia. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. This is your lucky month. You have me for the whole month. I'm all yours. It is a pleasure to see you on the first day of the Russian presidency. Allow me to briefly announce what we are planning for the month, week by week. We already had meetings today, traditional permanent representatives breakfast, where we discussed the program, and then the political coordinators fine-tuned it a little bit, and later we adopted our program of work. And I already briefed the non-members of the Security Council on its content. We will start the work. By the way, if somebody of you needs a copy, it's here on the table. We will start our work on the 4th of June with the informal interactive dialogue on the situation in Libya. Force Commander of UNAFOR-Med, Admiral Enrico Credentino, and Deputy Secretary General for Common Security and Defense Policy and Crisis Response at the European External Action Service, Pedro Serrano, will brief the Council via VTC from Brussels. The meeting, due to logistics, will begin at 2 o'clock p.m. We will discuss there the possible extension of the maritime inspections regime. This Council activity is not traditionally in the program, but it is scheduled. On the next day, on the 5th, we will discuss in consultations chemical demilitarization of Syria. High Representative for Disarmament Affairs Izumi Nakamitsu will brief us on the latest developments. On the 6th of June, we will start work in the morning with the debate on the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals. President of the mechanism, Theodore Meron, and prosecutor of the RMCT, Serge Bramertz, will brief and present the mechanism assessments. On the next day, the Council will gather for the troop contributing countries meeting to discuss the work of the UN mission in Mali. USG Jean-Pierre Lacroix will present the SG report on MINUSMA. 8th of June is an important day. It is reserved for the elections of the new non-permanent members of the Council. Briefing and consultations on the United Nations mission in Darfur are scheduled for June 11th. USG Jean-Pierre Lacroix again will brief the Council, and we will discuss the extension of the mission's mandate. We have not scheduled any activities for 12th of June, but of course, if there is any urgent need to meet, we will be ready to do so. On June 13th, we will gather to discuss UN office in Central Africa, Lord Resistance Army, in briefing and consultations. SRSG Francois Fall will present the SG report. On June 14th, we will start the working day with the TCC meeting on the UN Disengagement Observer Force. Then we will take a short but pleasant break around 10:30 onwards. We will invite all member states to the North Delegates Lounge to watch the ceremony of the World Cup opening live from Moscow. By the way, we will, in accordance with the tradition, we will install I think in 4 locations, TV screens, corners where we could watch football from Moscow. Some games will be live around 12, 1 o'clock p.m. Local time. These will be the evening games in Russia. Others will be replayed, recorded, the morning games. Then on the 14th, we will resume our work. In the afternoon, we have scheduled the briefing and consultations on MINUSMA. Again, Jean-Pierre Lacroix will brief during both meetings. We will discuss also the extension of the mandate of the mission in Mali. On the next day, the UN is closed, the 15th. Our Muslim friends will observe Eid al-Fitr. On June 18th, Monday, we will have only consultations on Yemen in the afternoon. Special Envoy Martin Griffiths will brief us on the latest developments in the country. A regular monthly briefing followed by consultations on the Middle East is scheduled for June 19th. Special Coordinator Nikolai Mladenov will hopefully brief us on the latest developments in the region. Later in the afternoon, we will discuss the work of the Disengagement Observer Force in consultations. On June 20th, International Criminal Court Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda will brief us on the ICC Sudan's dossier. On June 21st, there will be a briefing followed by consultations on the work of the United Nations Multi-Dimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in the Central African Republic. ASG Bintou Keita will brief. Next day, 22nd of June, is reserved for the elections to the International Court of Justice. And then that brings me to our signature event, which is a debate on the threats to international peace and security through the prism of the situation in the Middle East and Northern Africa. That will take place on the 25th, Monday in the morning at 11 p.m. 11 because the a.m. 11 because the Secretary General will be in the General Assembly the same morning at 10. This is not a ministerial level event, but we're encouraging high-level participation. Russia will be represented by Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Vershinin, who will chair the meeting. And we see this meeting as a good opportunity to conduct a comprehensive analysis of the roots of the crisis in the region. I was meeting my non-Security Council colleagues earlier today, and some of them said that this meeting is in a way unprecedented because in that format we might have not ever discussed this problem. This debate will be convened as a follow-up to the initiative voiced by our Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during the high-level segment of the 72nd session of the UNGA. No outcome is planned for the meeting. On June 26, we'll have quarterly debate on the situation in Afghanistan and the work of UN assistance mission in Afghanistan. SRSG and head of UNAMA Tadamichi Yamamoto will present the SG's report. As usual, we anticipate the intervention. Sorry, I pushed the wrong button. As usual, we anticipate the interventions from Afghans, a number of their neighbors, as well as interested states and the EU. On the next day, which is 27th, it will be quite loaded. We will first adopt 2 resolutions extending the mandate of Disengagement Observer Force and appointing the prosecutor of the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, and confirming that the Security Council has completed the review of the mechanism. Then we have scheduled the combined discussion on both Syria political and humanitarian in briefing and consultations, but it is quite probable that we will separate these 2 issues. We will discuss on the 27th, we will discuss only humanitarian, and when we will schedule the political, we will decide in consultations with our colleagues in the Council and with Staffan de Mistura. After that, in the afternoon, USG Rosemary DiCarlo will present the Secretary General's report on the implementation of Resolution 2231 on Iran during the Security Council briefing. Head of the delegation of the European Union to the UN, Joao Valle de Almeida, and Security Council facilitator, Ambassador Karel van Oosterom of Netherlands, will also brief the Council on the same matter. And given the latest developments with the JCPOA, as you understand, the discussion will be very lively. On June 28th, we will again start the day from adopting two resolutions extending the mandate of MINUSMA and UNAMID. Then we will proceed with the briefing and consultations to discuss the United Nations mission in South Sudan. And again, that will be Jean-Pierre Lacroix who will present the report of the Secretary General. In the afternoon, we will gather in consultations to listen to SRSG, the head of the United Nations Regional Center for Preventive Diplomacy in Central Asia, Ms. Natalia German, who will brief the Council on the activities conducted by the Center since our last meeting. On the next day, which is the last working day of our presidency, 29th of June, we have the annual Peacebuilding Commission meeting. Permanent representatives of Romania, Ion Ginga, and the Republic of Korea, Cho Tae-yul, in their capacities as chair and former chair of the Peacebuilding Commission, respectively, will brief the Council on the work of PBC. The Council members will consider the report of the Commission. And in the afternoon of the same day, we will discuss the work of UNMAS and consider the Secretary General's report on mine action. As for the formal wrap-up, the so-called Toledo formula, we are thinking of either 28th or 29th of June, and we will confirm it at a later date. That brings me to the end of my briefing. I would also like to use the opportunity to make a small but important announcement. Today, we will conclude the day by an event at the Visitors Center that our mission will organize in connection with the forthcoming World Soccer Cup in Russia. The ceremony, followed by a reception, will start at 6 o'clock p.m. All of you, of course, are cordially invited. Please bring your business cards with you as we plan to organize a raffle. Now, my dear colleagues, I'm ready to hear your questions or comments.
Mr. Ambassador, or Mr. President, a warm welcome and thank you on behalf of the UN Correspondents Association for this briefing. My name is Shervin Briceby, South African Broadcasting. Just a housekeeping question to begin with. You said 4 television screens. Will one be outside the Security Council?
There will be...
Can we insist on that?
There will be 3 outside of the Security Council.
3 outside the Security Council.
We were thinking about one in the Security Council, but when later we decided not to go for it.
Ambassador, my question is about the Middle East meeting this afternoon. Can you provide us with some clarity? Because we're a bunch of journalists that are very confused about what's going on. Are there 2 drafts? Is there one draft with a long list of amendments from the United States? And if there are 2 drafts, which one are you going to be supporting?
As far as I know, for this moment, we have a draft resolution by Kuwait, the one that was already circulating for quite a while, and we have the text that the US presented, and they presented that text as an amendment, although it is quite a lengthy one, and that will be discussed today at 3 o'clock, how we will proceed about it.
Second question to the press agency.
Can we clarify? One vote or 2? One vote or 2?
You never know.
What are you going to do?
That I will not tell you. As a president, look, I'm now in 2 heads. My national position is one thing, but as a president, I'm going to uphold the rules and procedures of the Security Council, and I'm sure that this issue will be discussed this afternoon.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Alexander and Fyodor. One quick question on Ukraine. There was this draft presented by you a couple of days ago, draft press statement. What's happening with it? And I understand there was a counter draft statement by the your European colleagues. Is there any way of combining 2? What's going on? And also on Syria, there have been efforts by the Western countries to adopt a resolution which would unify the 3 dossiers on Syria. What do you think about that? Does it have any future in your opinion? Thank you so much.
On the first question, the issue is still being discussed, and we are hopeful that we have a balanced PRST on the meeting on Ukraine. But you know, we never lose hope. But what will come out eventually, we have to see. It's not yet off the table. And yes, there is a possibility to combine both drafts, indeed. But that depends not only on our will, but on the will of our partners as well. On the resolution that you mentioned, at present, it is not being moved by anyone. It was mentioned, but it never took any even semi-official form, so to say. And I don't think that this is the right time for such a resolution. And I believe that my colleagues at a certain point earlier agreed with me on it.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. Majid Gili, Rudao Media Network. We hope to see you every day, not even once, twice. I want to ask, I know this month the voting on UNAMI mandates will not be part of your agenda, but there are now proposals to change the mandate of UNAMI, given the circumstances that have changed in Iraq after the defeat of ISIS. One of the proposals is by local government and Kurdistan regional government to have UNAMI have a bigger role in disputed territories between Baghdad and Erbil. Given Russia's new role, economic role, in especially Kurdistan region with oil investment, I wanted to ask your take about this. What do you think the role of UNAMI should be? Do you think the mandate should change or it should stay as it is? Thank you.
First of all, we should not be over complacent with the defeat of ISIS in Iraq or elsewhere. Still, it lingers on, and we know that there are incidents happening in the country with terrorist attacks. So we have to be vigilant on ISIS in Iraq. I think that the war is not over yet, although of course the major component of it was defeated, and we congratulate our Iraqi friends with it. On the mandate of UNAMI, I think that any change in the mandate that would contribute to the stabilization and prosperity and consensus in Iraq in general and within its regions would be supported by us. But we have to see what the proposals on the change of mandate are. If they are conducive to that goal, then of course we will support them.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
I hear you.
Yeah. My name is Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. Mr. Ambassador, don't you think that the Palestinians had suffered too much? 50 years of occupation, 70 years of displacement. I have two questions. First, isn't time to do something about the end of occupation and not only keep repeating the two-state solution? Do you believe this two-state solution is still viable and possible? On the other hand, I want to ask you about this warm relations between your country and Israel. You know that Israel is in violation of international law. It has been no other country that had violated UN Security Council resolution and GA resolution as much as Israel. But your country, although they resist hegemonic powers, but yet they have warm relations with Israel. Can you explain that? Thank you.
I fully agree. It's time to end occupation. We say it constantly. We say that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is, in fact, the core and the key to solving all other conflicts and puzzles in the Middle East. What is happening around this solving of the conflict is not very encouraging. We just had a meeting last week on that issue. We were speaking clearly that the Palestinian conflict, unfortunately, has become the hostage of geopolitical turmoils, and unless it is solved to the satisfaction of both Palestinian people and Israelis, that will be always that will continue to be the source of instability in the Middle East. We support the two-state solution. We never wavered from it, and I think that is the only viable solution. And this is not only us who believe in it. On our warm relations with Israel, yes, indeed, we are very lucky and fortunate to be friends of all the countries in the Middle East, without exclusion. We unlike some other countries, unfortunately. Yes, we have very good relations with Israel. We understand that there is a need to ensure that Israel has legitimate security concerns, but at the same time we are very principled on the policies that Israel conducts vis-a-vis Palestinian and vis-a-vis the occupation of the Palestinian territories.
Sure. Thank you. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coast for Access. Definitely hope to see you at the UNTV stakeout after consultations. And also there's a new sort of a daily email from the mission about who's going to brief, and whatever is coming up will be really helpful. I wanted to ask about Yemen on the 18th. I see it's listed as consultations. And I just wanted, I wanted to know, is there any thought of having an open briefing, at least initially, by Mr. Griffin? And have you taken note of this? There seems to be a moves on the port of Hodeidah by the government / Saudi-led coalition. Are you watching that to maybe deal with that before the 18th? Will you deal with it on the 18th? The only other question I have is on Cyprus. It seems to have dropped off the agenda, but it's said that the Secretary General tried to send a French former head of peacekeeping there, was rebuffed, is trying to send Jane Hall-Lute. Is the Council still in the loop on this, or are you being updated on this, and what do you think can or should happen with the issue of Cyprus?
I think that Yemen consultations should be held in consultations. Martin Griffiths, the special envoy, started his job very energetically. Everyone who met him appreciated his attitude and intentions and willingness to look at it with a fresh view. He's now in the process of preparing a sort of a road map how to move, and the ideas that he shares with us are very solid and viable and reasonable. The problem is that, of course, the situation on the ground is not very conducive for moving any peace plan forward. With the recent developments in and around Yemen. But we hope that Special Envoy Griffiths either is in Sana'a or will be in Sana'a very shortly to talk to the Houthis. He's talking to the countries in the region who have a stake, in particular Saudi Arabia, of course. Yes, we know about the developments, about the onslaught on Hodeidah, which is not, as far as I understand, is not progressing as it started to progress initially. And of course, Yemen, like any other conflict, it cannot be resolved by seizing Hodeidah or whatever else. I mean, it cannot be resolved by political means, by kind of a agreement that whereby all parties would be satisfied. Let's hear from Martin Griffiths on the 18th. But my humble proposal is that he briefs us. He briefs us first. He will brief us in the open first, right? In the briefing, or in the. I think that's a better format for the situation we are in. We have to hear his open and not influenced by any interference remarks. We need to hear his frank assessment of the situation that he will bring with himself from the region. On Cyprus, indeed, we have I would call it a pause. And not much has been happening since those days when things didn't go as many expected. There were many internal factors influencing the developments in Cyprus, both in the south and in the north. Now we are waiting for another political event to happen, but I know that within the Secretariat there is a school of thought of how to go about it. The next step, so to say. You know that we had a special envoy being proposed, but before some things happen politically in some of these areas, I think that will not move. But we of course are following the situation.
Thank you, Ambassador. Betül Yürük with the Turkish news agency Anadolu. I was wondering if Russia has reached an agreement with Israel on pulling the Iranian forces out of southern Syria, according to some media outlets, both quoting Israeli and Russian sources. And my second question will be on Syria again. Do you expect the Constitutional Committee, which was agreed in Sochi, to be formed sometime soon? Thank you.
Yes, I heard these news. They were in the press and elsewhere about an agreement reached on certain disengagement in the southwest of Syria. And I think my understanding is that the agreement was reached. Whether it has been implemented by now, as of now, I cannot answer, but I understand that parties that were involved in reaching the agreement are satisfied with what they have reached. If it has not been done by now, it will be done in the near future. On the Constitutional Commission, there was, I may call it a major breakthrough, when finally the Syrian government provided a list of their delegates to the to the Constitutional Commission, with which Staffan de Mistura is now working. We still expect the list of the opposition for which Turkey is responsible. And also there is a portion of the members that will represent independence, scientific community, social organizations, gender, women, etc. That I'm not sure has been formed yet. But that was a major breakthrough. We worked with the Syrian government for a long time to asking them to produce that list that would allow Staffan de Mistura to move forward with the commission. We have not heard from him because the list is not complete yet. We have only one part of this tripartite arrangement. Maybe that will be a cause and a reason for us in the Council to discuss later in the month when we discuss political Syria.
Please.
Ambassador, if I just follow up actually on those questions. First, what is the current timeline that you're seeing with regard to the political process and actually getting the parties to Geneva again? And secondly, could you elaborate on this understanding that has been reached with regard to southern Syria? Tell us exactly how this works. Who is doing what?
Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. Let's see. When we see it public, then it will be much easier to comment. On the timeline, you know, we are not responsible for the timeline. It's in fact Staffan de Mistura who is the clockmaster, but unfortunately his clock didn't work for a long time. Now the Swiss clockmasters maybe helped him to repair it a little bit, and now with these new mechanisms that he was given, he has the resources and means to move forward. It's not an easy process, of course, but as we always were saying, this should be a Syrian-led process, and nobody can solve the puzzle of Syria except for the Syrians themselves. We perfectly well understand that Syria doesn't have a military solution. Besides fighting and defeating ISIS, there is a need to reconcile within the Syrian society. And that is one one but very important step in that direction. When it will start and when it will finish, I cannot tell you. But of course, we as members of the Security Council, we as guarantors of the Astana process, we as a country which has good relations with the Syrian government, will be trying to be conducive and helpful.
Maybe last question.
Thank you. Quick two questions. One about Palestine, and that is that Michael Link is a rapporteur with regard to the Palestinian situation, and he has come up with...
Who I'm sorry?
Michael Link. I can give you the information on it. He's the official rapporteur. He has come up with a presentation to the General Assembly that said that Israel has obligations as an occupier, and it has failed in all of those obligations, and so it's not a legitimate occupier anymore. It's illegitimate, and so that's a very important issue to be, I thought, to be looked at by the Security Council, because it's not an equal situation. It's not even occupier-occupied. It's an occupier who has failed in the obligations and the occupied. And so it just seems that it would be good if the Security Council invited him and heard at least what he has to say and discussed that. And the second is whether there was any discussion in the Security Council about the fact there finally is negotiations with North Korea and the U.S. and is there any way the Security Council can support that this is happening and give its help and if anything is needed? Thank you.
The name Michael Link resembles something, but could you tell me what's his position? He's the rapporteur on what?
He's the rapporteur I thought he reported to the General Assembly, and
okay.
You know, he's one of the official rapporteurs on the issue.
Okay. Second thing, I don't know such thing as legitimate occupier. That's a new notion for me. There is no such thing as a legitimate occupier. The occupier can only be legitimate. We discuss Middle East regularly. It's every month practically every month on our Security Council agenda. We discuss the recent developments, tragic developments in Gaza. We will discuss it this afternoon, in fact. That's a follow-up of what happened then and the follow-up what happened earlier. We will have our main event on the 25th, also dedicated to the core issues of the Middle East crisis, where Palestinian issue is in the center. We regularly, with our partners, with Europeans and with other colleagues, vote on decisions which condemn the illegal occupation and call for the full implementation of all UN resolutions, both Security Council and General Assembly, that were adopted on the matter. So I think that, of course, the Palestinian people is a people that suffered for a long time, but I wouldn't say that his plight is being neglected. Of course, there are new difficulties on the road to peace that emerged recently, but the Palestinian issue is in the center of our and of many of our colleagues' attention. On North Korea, yes, we discussed it this morning during the meeting with my colleagues, ambassadors. Nikki Haley briefed us briefly on what's going on, and what's going on is preparation for a summit, which may or may not take place exactly on the 12th of June, but there is a strong will by both parties as of now to hold that meeting. We wish our US colleagues very well, very frankly and sincerely. We think that denuclearization of North Korea, of DPRK, along with security guarantees to that country and overall security architecture in Northeast Asia is a very important thing, which is something that is aspired by not only US, North Korea, Japan, or Republic of Korea, but by Russia, China, and elsewhere in the world. Yes, indeed, I said that if something happens during our presidency on North Korea, we might wish to be briefed in the Security Council, may or may not take some action on it, but that we have to see in relation to how the situation develops. Okay. Yeah. Michael Link, the Special Rapporteur of the Human Rights Council on the human rights in Palestine. Thank you very much for your attention and for being with me. And this time I promise to be with you and not to run from you when you see me in the corridor.